Race prep, baby. Let's go. We got tie rods, steering flag, ripping the front diff out, checking the front end, checking the A-arms and front axles and front heat sinks and shock tower brace and a whole bunch of other crap. Let's do it. Woo! All right, got the hood and all that crap off. And so next I was gonna do the shock tower brace, or at least get this one out. That's gonna be kind of a pain in the ass. And then I'll start ripping apart the suspension and the steering and all that stuff. I think I'm gonna take the diff out. It's gonna be kind of a pain, but let's do it. Okay, shocks are off. They fought way more than they should because of that. The stupid Super ATV shock tower brace that is bent to hell. These right there, that bolt hole, it's all oblong. The only support for this shock tower brace is 4 little 6mm bolts. This thing is it's junk. I mean, Super ATV, everyone knows is crap, but this thing's all bent. The chassis is not. I know for a fact the chassis is straight, but the freaking shock tower brace is bent. And another thing you can see right there, we had to put the sketchy foam stuff in there because it freaking pinches the radiator hose. It does the same thing on the other side. And just to show how bent this thing is, in order to take the top shock bolts out, we have to pull all 4 of the lower mount bolts. It's a joke. This thing is all bent up. Yeah, it's crap. It's going away real quick. Putting a good S3 brace on there. All right, update. As if I didn't hate this stupid Super ATV shock tower brace enough. Okay, trying to pull it out. And I have the S3 gusset kit here. You can see right in there, this gusset kit needs to pull out just a little bit. I loosened all the bolts, pulled all the A-arm bolts. This thing will not move because the A-arm bolts are holding it closed, or are holding the gusset plate too far in. And I need to flex it just enough to pull this around that little part of the chassis. It's not going. I gotta pull the upper arms off, I think, just to get the stupid shock tower brace off. So yeah, do not buy Super ATV crap. Oh my God, I got it. Woo! That fought me. I had to take that upper arm off and had to wedge some screwdrivers down between the gusset plate and the frame to pull the gusset plate out because it was sandwiched in there. So finally got that POS out of there. Hi, Mario. Hi, buddy. Because basically this wear pattern right there, the gusset plate was on top of this. I had to drill holes in this, and the gusset plate sandwiched this. So that's what I was fighting. That took me several hours just to get it out of there. Granted, I'm a paraplegic and it's harder for me to do this kind of stuff. But yeah, that's that one out. So I'm gonna try to get the new one in. I think get that siren mounted, and then I'm gonna keep going with all this. I don't actually know if I'm gonna pull the diff out. I might leave the diff in and then just pull the steering rack out. So we'll see. Prep continues. And I also noticed something else that is wonky with this thing. I don't know if you can see how much slop is in there, but the sway bar, yeah, those bushings on both sides, there we go. I can rock it up and down, and that's where the noise was coming from in this thing. There was a crap load of noise in the front end. I had a feeling it was those. But yeah, it's all like yellowed plastic and it's all egg shaped. So I'm gonna order a set of beefy ones, and yeah, there we go. The prep continues and race car stuff never ends. I'm gonna leave it just like this for right now and deal with the shock tower brace later. I'm gonna tackle the steering now. I think that everything's apart because I got a little more room right now, but normally you would disconnect the tie rods to pull the steering rack out. You'd disconnect them from there and here. What I'm gonna try to do is pull these 4, I think they're 18 millimeter bolts, or there's 2 on this side and then there's 3 on the other side. And then pull from the end right here, pull this bolt, and then disconnect from the steering shaft. Basically under this boot, there's a little 10 millimeter bolt that runs through the steering shaft, and then you can pull that back out. There's a couple of U-joints on the steering shaft that makes it pretty easy once you undo these 2 bolts and this bolt, and then kind of lets the whole steering come out. With this rack brace makes it a lot harder, so I might have to disconnect the tie rods. We'll see. When I put it all in, I didn't have the diff in. I know I said I was going to take the diff out, but I think I'm going to leave it in and then just change the axle. Woo! We got it out. That was a little bit of a fight, especially by myself, but I've done this before, so it's not that big of a deal. Basically, this is what's shot in here is the rack itself is okay, but basically right here in this joint, there's a little bit of slop, actually in both of them, and it's basically just a really, really weak point in the steering system. These racks are notoriously weak too, but this is another weak point. I mean, you can see how beefy the tie rod is and then how it chokes down to this, and it's internally real weak. Anyway, the Hess system obviously replaces the tie rods, which kind of sucks because I put these expensive shock therapy tie rods on. I'm still going to use the end Heim, so that way I can use the bump steer delete kit. The Hess rods, there's a Heim right here too. And then it replaces all this weakness with that Hess flag. So should make it a lot stronger, because I mean, I've had the brace on there and I toasted a rack and I toasted this even with the brace on. I thought it would be okay, but I ended up going the cheap route, going this way. So doing it right this time, and hopefully no more steering issues. Anyway, the reason I pulled it out all together is so I can measure total length from Heim to Heim, and then get it as close as I possibly can to that when I put it back together to make the alignment a lot easier. Obviously, you still have to do an alignment, but if you can get it as close as possible, then it makes it a lot easier. So anyway, start pulling this apart. Okay, so this is all loosely assembled. The one thing that sucks, that I'm not a huge fan of, this logo, once I spin it, and if I have this toward the inside, like say you're standing from the back of the car looking in, because this is how the rack will be oriented, this logo will be the right side up, and this one's the opposite. Stupid little thing, but I like to have my stuff matched. So the shock therapy tie rods, they match. They have laser etched on the Heims right here, and one side is one way and the other side is the other way. So Hess, come on. I know it's cheaper to just laser etch them one way, but come on. Anywho, get this measured out now and go from there. Okay, so it's close. It's about 56 3/4, 7/8, somewhere around there. Now I'm gonna pull these. I'm gonna lightly tighten the jam nuts now that it's roughly in place, and then I'm gonna pull these bolts and then throw the rack back in. Okay, so got those pulled off and cleaned up and all that stuff. Say hi to Mario. And I think I'm now, instead of putting that in right now, I'm going to pull the axles. That way there's just a little bit more room to move things around. You totally don't need to do this, but I'm doing the axles anyway. It's all apart. I might as well just pull those now. So I'm gonna do axles, and then I will throw that rack in, and then kind of give it a little give it a little once over. I kind of have been. I'm trying to clean up everything. When we lost the axle before, it blew grease all over the freaking place. So, yeah, it's been a mess in there, as you can tell. But yeah, so keep going with this. Let's get this thing starting to button back up. Update, I'm an idiot. Didn't know you can't just pull on axles from the shaft. I always knew you had to be careful with that, but it's always worked for me in the past. Anyway, I just ripped the CV apart inside, so yeah. I wasn't planning on ever running this one again, but I was gonna keep it as a spare, and yeah, that's not good. So yeah, now I gotta buy the freaking tool to pull the boot apart and pull it all apart and rebuild it where I wasn't expecting to. So anyway, life lesson: use a freaking pry bar, or even better yet, crow's foot. Okay, so this is what I'm putting in. It looks basically like a stock axle, except see the little straw right there? That's one of the things that Blaze Racing Services does. That way when it gets really hot in here, instead of it ballooning out the boot like what happens, which most people don't even notice when it happens, but it happens in long desert races, allows air to escape. Obviously you can't really use these in water because you can get water in there, but anyway, he like takes it apart, tumbles the cage and the balls and everything, polishes all that. Probably the most important step, he uses really good grease in these it's really expensive for the grease alone. But yeah, I mean, he has one race on these things. They're beefy for sure. So I need to put the heat sink on, and then I'm gonna throw it in. And speaking of heat sinks, that's what they are. I don't know if you can tell. It's like just a little fin thingy that slides right onto the CV to lower axle temperatures. They've measured by like 40 degrees, so really happy to finally put these babies on. So here we go. Okay, so this is basically what I was talking about with the heat sinks. This is the diff side right here. These just slide on. They're not press fit, anything like that. And then you have 4 little set screws that go in, and then they're just red Loctited in. So really easy. They just slide right on. I had to tap it with a plastic hammer, but other than that, super easy. And now to get the steering rack in. All right, at a halfway point, car's all apart, starting to go back together, so I figured I'm at a good point to be able to fully assess and give a full list of everything this thing needs and the cost of prep specifically. First thing we did before ripping the car down, we just like did the full shake test, grabbed every wheel, shook it in every direction, looked for cracks everywhere, just visually looked for everything wrong with it before. That was before we even took anything off of it. We just washed it, gave it a good shake test, and looked. Fortunately, we didn't find anything major, just like I said, the rack and that sort of thing. Then started finding more stuff as we dug into it. But anyway, okay, so for sheer parts that I needed, the tie rods and steering flag, which was kind of an upgrade, but those go bad really quickly. Usually steering rack is like every 3rd race at this rate, so hopefully that'll fix that. I needed to do 4 axles. 2 of them were pretty good, but I just want to replace all 4 right now. They all have a lot of hours on them, and yeah, I'd rather have 4 fresh, and then I can take those couple that are still pretty good and keep those as spares. Brake pads and fluid, I'm gonna run, I forget, it's this fluid right here. Kind of expensive, but there's like half a liter that goes into this thing. It won't smoke. Every single race should be flushing brake fluid, or every couple of races or so. Something that, you know, needs to be done once every 2 years or something as a play driver, but with racing, you're so hard on the brakes. And then this is an add-on thing with the axles, but the heat sinks from Blaze Racing Services, they just prolong axle life a ton, especially at high speed. Axles get really hot. These decrease the operational temperature of the CVs by like 50 degrees. So, okay, the next 2 things are kind of add-on things that you don't necessarily need, or we don't necessarily need. a walker link, little suspension link. That's just going to smooth out the ride quite a bit and save the car in the chattery crap. And the other add-on is the shock tower brace. I went cheap, got a Super ATV, not a fan, like I said. Got an S3 one, so throwing that on, and then I have to mount the siren to that because that's how we, on this car, mounted the siren. And then the next two things, again, kind of add-on things. The lead nav program that we use for navigation, I just need to upgrade that. I use the cheaper, like $60 one. I need to upgrade to the $250 because next couple of races they allow pre-running, and that has a pre-run bar. So, and then the other add-on that's not really relevant here, just recertifying neck brace. Anyway, that one's, I included these couple things because these come up at every race for every car. There's always going to be extra expenses like this to keep in mind. So, and then one that I found after I tore this apart, sway bar bushings are smoked. Those are like, I don't know, $20 from a dealership. So not that big of a deal, but that's just goes to show one of those little things that you need to replace. But as far as the job to do, like I said, steering rack rebuild, pull the rack out, replace the flag with the Hess steering flag and the new tie rods, and then do a full alignment on all that. Engine oil, and then, I mean, typically, like for the race after the next one we're doing, we're going to do all the fluids. I just did transmission fluid before the last race, and that was only 150 miles. And then I have in this list to check just all the moving points, basically. All the bushings, the arm bushings, the radial joints. Known weak point on these is the stock, either the trailing arm radial joints, the front pivot point of the trailing arm, or especially the lower shock bearings. OEM are trash and they crack super easily. So I've been through a bunch of those. I ended up going with Schmitty before the last race. I now have the front shocks out. They're still perfectly fine. So good there. But that was on the list to check. But otherwise, just like torque all the bolts, put a torque wrench on everything, motor mounts, everything it's going to loosen up. We've had so many little things loosen. I have service the clutches on here. Basically all I'm doing is blowing them out and inspecting and then putting a fresh belt on. So not much to do there for right now. I'm gonna do a total KWI kit, send them off to Blaze, have them do their thing after this next race. But like I said, flush brake fluid, change the pads, do all that stuff. We had no brakes come lap 2. Brake fluid is like black, it's smoked. We flushed it a couple times, but yeah, needs to be done real bad. And then I have mount fire suppression system. I didn't include that in the list of things. That's just one of the things we need for racing. I'm not going to dwell on that. Fix the skid plate. The front of the skid plate on this got kind of ripped down from hitting a rock just right under there. So I can't afford another $1,000 for a skid plate, so I'm just going to figure out how to make a fix for it. Common thing with these cheap stock skid plates. Like I said, change the axles and add heat sinks. Not much to add there. Flush the coolant system. Should have listed that with the fluids, but it looks fine. Color's fine. We haven't had any overheating problems, knock on wood, yet. But it's the original fluid, so just going to change it just to be safe because I don't know. I don't want to blow up a motor. And then, like I said, we got the shock tower brace. I need to mount these limit straps I got for the front. I have limit straps on the back already. But mount limit straps on the front and mount the shock tower brace. These are just miscellaneous things. Remount the pumper. We threw that one on last second. It died right before the race after the pre-run lap. So had to throw that one on. Fix a GoPro issue, basically. The ground loop isolator that goes between the radio intercom and the GoPro to record our audio it was bad. I sent it to PCI. They sent me a brand new fresh one. All good there. So that's all fixed. That was pretty easy. Just another miscellaneous random thing. The wheel leak. It ended up being a bunch of little teeny tiny punctures. That happens with racing. Unfortunately, I think that unfortunately that tire I think is just trash. I was hoping it was just from the bead locks, but goes with racing. So I bought 10 tires at the beginning of the year. I've done I've done 2 races now, and now I'm down to 2 brand new ones left. So I got to do another big order. So keep that in mind because tires are freaking expensive, and you go through a lot of them. Spark plugs, I need to do those. I've never done them on this thing. I have 1,500 race miles on it. I want to do them before they get bad. It still runs perfectly fine, doesn't have a code, anything like that. So just one little extra thing. And then the four-wheel alignment, I'm gonna do the front wheels first. You can kind of do like an X pattern. You measure from like the front of one wheel to the back of the other, and then vice versa, so you can get them square. Easiest way, I have little alignment things that I'll show later in the video, so stay tuned there. And then after we do the fronts, then I'll do a four-wheel alignment, but honestly, I'm gonna pull apart the rear end too. So I'll do that after doing the rear end. Anyway, that's kind of the gist of things right now. There's other little stuff that comes up you don't think about when racing. Just know that racing is really hard on a vehicle, and yeah, it's expensive, and it's expensive in a lot more ways than you think. You know, you see a sign-up fee that's, the entry fee is anywhere between $500 to $2,000, and then there's all the travel to get there. There's all the expenses of being at the race, but then there's all this after, and so much work you have to do after the race. So just keep that in mind. My whole thing with this channel has been to share what I learned on this journey, from becoming just a trail goober dune princess to getting into amateur racing to now starting to race bigger stuff. And yeah, it's expensive. So anyway, gonna keep going with the rebuild, and stay tuned. Next to throw the front axles on, and yeah, it's been a fun project. Let's keep going. Alrighty, got the axle out. Definitely took some force, but I don't know if you can see. Yeah, the seal took some damage from me. So anyway, gotta replace that now, and yeah, keep going on this prep. I'm an idiot, and yeah, be careful. Don't push on those seals. Right there, big old dent. So, all right, well, time to drain the fluid out of it and walk the seal out of there. Yahtzee, got the seal out. It was tricky because there's this blue silicone they put around the outside of it to keep it in. And pro tip, if you're really careful, you don't run in too far. This one I went in a little bit too far, but to get them out like this, instead of prying out, which is really hard to do sometimes and can't keep because of the diff lock actuator, you run a little wood screw in, and then I don't know if it showed up, but just used a cat's paw and just pried it right out, and it popped right out. Super easy. So that's trash, and gonna throw the new one in, clean this surface up here, and then put some new silicone in. Also, pro tip, Racetech seal grease for dirt bikes, specifically for seals. This stuff is freaking expensive. And it's in. As you can see, I used a red RTV on there. Yeah, didn't have blue. Used blue before. Anyway, a little tricky to get in. Anyway, I'm gonna fill it up now and start throwing this thing back together. All right, so it's getting there. Front end is almost buttoned up. I gotta re-drill or do some remounting of the radiator, because this bumper doesn't quite mount the radiator for the lower mounts in the stock position, so might have to remount those. We'll see. Anyway, axles are in with the heat sinks, so those are super cool. That bolt right there was really tricky to torque because, of course, I have a super wide angle camera, so it doesn't do it justice, but because of the diff actuator cover, I ended up loosening these 3 bolts, and then there's one on the back, pulling this diff actuator case out of the way just a little bit. It wouldn't come all the way out because of the Blaze Racing heat sinks, but no big deal. Anyway, it's just this arm set up with this gusset kit in particular, so I was able to torque those, put the cross check on all of those bolts. Got everything torqued. Need to connect the sway bar end links and then connect the tie rods because we got Lightning McQueen Jr. here. Ka-chow! Anyway, Yeah, doing a redo on these lights a little bit. Maybe this time, maybe next time. Siren mounted, as you can see in there. Kind of ghetto, but does its job. But the big one, these shocks. Yes, it's an old sticker. All freshened up, fresh divider. Yeah, old stickers, like I said, but that's who does all of my stuff. Robert Campbell, Vital Motion Co. Go check him out. He is by far the most fair priced suspension tuner there is. He uses Hyperco springs. This setup works so damn well. Robert's a really good dude to work with. He races, he knows his stuff. He's been around racing his entire life. He's a really good dude. Highly recommend. Anyway, okay, so that's about it for the front end. I still gotta pull the wheels off, do a couple other little things, obviously get the hood on. And another note, make sure, especially on these fronts, you freaking grease the bejesus out of those splines, otherwise they're gonna be tricky getting out of the diff. We ended up putting both of these front axles in, like I said, in the middle of the last race, and didn't grease them up super well. They weren't super prepped to begin with, and ended up ripping them apart as I was trying to pull them out. So, got to rebuild, yeah, it's dislocated right at that boot, on here, inside, and then this one I popped back together, but I got to get a new boot kit for it, so got to rebuild those two axles. So may have destroyed two axles just by not greasing properly. And on the rear, of course, there's terrible lighting over here. Got the new axles on, or new to me axles. They're you can see they're kind of chunked out. I bought these from Chris Blaze off of his race car. He has one race on them, but he will race prep axles. Basically what he does, he takes them all apart, tumbles the balls and the cages, completely rebuilds them, and puts really high-end grease on these. And then of course I got the heat sinks on there as well. Lower the axle temperatures 50 plus degrees, so that'll keep these alive a lot longer. But yeah, it's pretty easy to change the rear axles on these. And then of course I checked out all the Heims. I pulled them out from the center. Got a couple of these shock therapy Heims off the radius rods. Let's see, those guys. A couple of them are loose, or starting to get loose, but I'll replace those after the next race. But yeah, next is get these rear hubs all bolted back up. Then I'm going to resurface these brake rotors. So, show you that in a second. But yeah, just trying to get everything bolted up back here. And then maybe the most ghetto thing I'm ever gonna do to this car is resurface the brake rotors with one of these brake hones. It's not ideal, it's not gonna get it super flat. It's probably gonna destroy the rotor and the pads, but I don't have enough money for all four rotors right now, and they are glazed, so I got new pads, and I'm going to resurface it with this on a drill. And then after this race, before the next one, we will do all four rotors. I don't know if you can see. Kind of ghetto, but hey, it works. Took the ridges down, and the new EBC pads. So, brakes done. Shazam! Hopefully this makes those rough, nasty, rocky races suck a little bit less. If you don't know, it's a sway bar link, more specifically an articulating sway bar link. So basically it'll act like having no sway bar when you're going through the little teeny tiny chop stuff, and then when you need it, it'll bottom out right there. You can see there's not a whole lot of travel in there. But basically, it'll bottom out, and then you'll have your full sway bar. So, i.e. in the corners. I don't know. I haven't ran it yet. I've been told by a lot of racers to run these. I'm just doing one side. And that was also recommended to me by a lot of racers because you still need your sway bar in corners and that sort of thing. Despite what the rock donkeys say, they don't know what they're talking about. You need a sway bar when you're going fast. So, anyway, threw that on. We'll see. I'll report back. But yeah, there's the old pads. They are smoked. So, fresh ones in, brakes resurfaced, like I said. And now to get the hood on and all that. Slowly making progress. Okay, that's almost a wrap on the car. Brakes done. I don't know if you saw in the time lapse, I did a rough alignment on it. Just used just this thing. It's just a piece of angle iron. Drilled a couple holes in it, and then you run some lug nuts down, and then you put a level on it. Level it off, and then do the same on the other side, and then you measure, let's see, hopefully some of that makes sense. Basically just, you measure like diagonally the front right to left rear, and then vice versa, left front to right rear. That'll basically get you square, so both wheels are parallel with each other, and then you start messing with toe. So hopefully it makes sense. It's kind of the redneck way to do this. Fortunately, my buddy has an alignment rack, so I'm going to get this properly aligned soon. But anyway, yeah, that's about it on this this prep. Still got a little bit to do. Let's see. Got to fix the skid plate, like I said. Haven't done that. Did the sway bars, radiator. I need to mount the fire suppression system. That'll be here sometime this week. Just do some new numbers because we switched class, so had my graphics guy do that. Got to torque the axle nuts, prep those axles properly. Just do some stuff with the hand controls and steering boot. No big deal. Did the ball joint, did the rough alignment, and the last thing, this tire sealant. It's about, I think it was 75 bucks for a gallon of it, but hopefully will be enough to do at least the 4 tires that I'm gonna have on the car. It's kind of a preventative thing. It's a lot like slime. That's the brand, Monster Seal. But it's kind of like built to last, whereas slime is like an emergency thing. So I'm putting it in as preemptive. These Tensor tires have been great. Like, I mean, this is 2 races on it. You can see it's just barely worn in. That's 12 hours of racing, and then another like 6-hour race in the rocks. So, anyway, I'm gonna put that sealant in here just in case. We did get one flat at a race previously, like I said. There's a couple of these where I marked out on one of the tires. There's a couple little teeny tiny pinholes right between the tread blocks. And it loses about, I don't know, a pound every 3 days or something, so it's not crazy, but yeah, hopefully that sealer will fix it. Otherwise, that's the gist of the prep. But yeah, the total bill for just consumables, not including upgrades, was, I don't know, 1,700 bucks, something like that. So yeah, if you're looking at getting into racing, that's what you got to expect. It's expensive. Just, yeah, it's a lot of work to go racing. Like I said, all of those things. Is it worth it? I think so. Stay tuned. We got a big, cool race coming up. Hopefully that thing does us proud. Thanks for watching. Peace.